I am starting my live all over again because I did not make my live public, which is one of the mistakes that I made early on in doing lives. And so I am starting my live late, but I'm starting my live over. And so what we're going to talk about in this live is we're going to talk about the FIRE movement. And we are going to go through the different pillars of, there we go. Let's see if we can straighten out our camera here. Hi everybody, I'm sorry I'm late. I started the live unlisted, which is one of the mistakes that I made when I very first started doing lives. And so now I'm restarting the live 40 minutes late, if you can believe that, because I've already gone through quite a bit of the live, but it was all unlisted. So I'm starting the whole thing over again, and I'm just going to go through the whole thing all over again. So what I want to do is say welcome to FIRE with Dr. Ninja Turtle, even though he's late because he's new to YouTube and doing things wrong. So we're going to talk today about FIRE and the different types of FIRE that there are. But first, let me tell you about my story with FIRE. I started FIRE 10 years before I retired because the federal government decided that they were going to cut people's jobs, much like they recently did with the current administration, but this was way back in 2011. And they told me that I would most likely have a job cut and that, oh, thank you for joining, Shadow Scout. I'm late because I went live unlisted. So I'm starting over. And so anyway, my story is that I started FIRE 10 years before I retired because the federal government was cutting jobs and I was getting not losing my job like some people did, but I was taking a pay cut, but keeping my job. Now, I had a very specialized job with the federal government. So it would have been hard for them to just say, we'll just let this person go. Because there were very few people in the country that did what I did. So I'm very blessed that I had that job. However, what they said was, we're going to cut your pay 30%. And instead of taking away the entire 30% of pay in 1 year, we are going to reduce your pay each year for 3 years. So that was very tough. To go to work every year when everyone else were getting pay raises, I was getting a pay cut. And that was very hard. But what it did was it launched me into the FIRE movement. And I didn't know about the FIRE movement. I just knew that I had to not lose my condo that I had in DC and not lose my duplex that I had in Vermont. So what did I do? I launched into the FIRE movement. And we're going to talk about pillars of FIRE. And I did these things without even knowing about the FIRE movement. Let's define FIRE. It's about reaching a point where your investments support your lifestyle. And I often say this, right? Let your assets pay for your liabilities. And I learned that from Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read it, read the book. It's not a real estate book, but it's a good book. So now we talk about, I am now and was able to retire early when I had enough income to support my lifestyle. And basically my side hustle of being a teaching assistant and then eventually being an adjunct professor in colleges replaced the income from the federal government. And we'll talk about that more in just a little bit. But let's talk about the 3 pillars of FIRE. And these pillars are that you have an aggressive savings rate. Now, this is saying that you're starting late and no, Tiger, I'm late. I had it unlisted, my live, and so that was my mistake. I just didn't put it public. And so I was sitting here wondering why there's nobody here, and it was my fault. So sorry about that, Tiger. So I was talking about the pillars of FIRE, which is saving aggressively. If you start saving later in life, like I did, then you save aggressively. If you start saving earlier in life, like in your 20s, the Money Guy show says that you should start saving in your 20s. Well, in my 20s, my life was chaotic, so that wasn't happening for me. But if you start in your 20s, you do not have to save, like they say here, up to 50% of your income. Now, a lot of people in the FIRE movement, they live on one income of a couple, and the other person is what they save. That's how they're able to save 50% of their income. And so what I did was I had to cut my expenses and go out and get a second job. I worked at least 2 jobs, if not 3, 4, or 5 jobs during those 10 years. And that's how I was able to have such a high savings rate. But I also increased my income by increasing the number of colleges and the number of classes that I taught. So all of those kept increasing year after year after year of my income until my teaching income equaled my federal government income. Because remember, they lowered my pay and they didn't give me a raise for 10 years. So my pay was basically the same for the last 10 years. Actually, it went down, down, down for 3 years, so the last 7 years. I kept increasing my income through getting a PhD and then becoming an adjunct professor at colleges until that reached what the government was paying me. So at that point, I could say I have the income to fund my lifestyle without working. The other part to that was I stayed at the government for those 10 years to get the pension. A lot of people in FIRE have a goal, a financial goal at the end. My financial goal was the pension. It was also the lifetime health care that I got with the federal government. Some people use the healthcare marketplace until they get to an age where they can get Medicare. I have lifetime health care for about $200 a month. So that works for me, but that was part of the plan. And that's why I call people in my community owners, because we define our own future and we design the life that works for us. So the other part, the other pillar is investing smartly, right? I had to get to the point where I could max out my 401k every single year. That was my investing smartly. And that worked out for me because I retired on less than $500,000. And I had that money in my 401k, which is called the TSP for the government. But I had that money to put down on my retirement home, which lowered the the mortgage that we pay on this retirement home. So investing smartly. Now, a lot of people do low income index funds, ETFs, and real estate. I did real estate and I did my 401k. So everyone gets to choose. And as you saw in my Wednesday video, having low fee index funds could really save you quite a bit of money if you watch your fees. So the third thing and the last pillar of the FIRE movement is living below your means. I had no choice. See, I didn't know about the FIRE movement. I just started living below my means, so I did not lose what I already had. Now, some people would say, well, why didn't you just sell the rental property? You know, your pay was going down. Why not just sell the rental property in Vermont? My future plan had always been to live off of my rental properties. So selling my rental property was never an option because it was never a part of my future retirement plan. Let's talk about the benefits of FIRE. And this could be less than an hour live because I was so late getting started. So who knows how long this one's going to be. And I had a poll question that didn't work because it was in the other stream. So anyway, let's go to the benefits of fire. You have the freedom to choose your time. And time freedom is more precious than monetary freedom. I have free time today. Yes, I'm financially free, which does not mean I have a ton of money. It just means the little bit of money I have coming in covers my lifestyle. That's what financially free is. So as we go through the different levels of fire, you will be able to see that you get to choose what is financially free to you. And the definition is just not the same. I'm very frugal. I live in a low cost of living area. My needs are very little, and we'll see that in just a moment. You have more control over your life. I can come and go because YouTube is not an income stream for me. It's an avocation. A lot of people use YouTube to get an income stream so that they can quit their corporate jobs or so that they can live the lifestyle that they want to live. And I think that's fabulous. I totally 100% support people using in YouTube to increase their income. Absolutely. I love it. I believe in business ownership. It's what I studied for my PhD. And I think that everyone should be a business owner. And when you have a YouTube channel, you are a business owner. Do not mistake that. And so you need to treat YouTube like a business. The last one that I want to talk about is less stress about money. You know, that is a benefit of being financially free. Whether you're frugal like me and you live in a low cost of living area, or you downsize your house. You know, my friend Tiger on Fire is going through that now. You downsize your living situation so that you need less money in retirement. It gives you a lot more freedom to just be. And that's what is nice about being in retirement, is I don't have to punch a clock. Nobody's telling me where to be and what to do. I get to decide my own life. So let's talk about the types of fire. And once I go through these types of fire, I'm going to tell you about something I just learned this week, because I believe in always be learning. Always, for the rest of your life, be a constant learner, a lifelong learner. And so I learned this week on a show about passive investing about this new term flow. And it's F-L-O-W. Now, I will tell you about that after I go through the 5 different types of fire that I'm going to discuss today. And so there are 5 main types of fire, which represent different lifestyles. And there's also, these types are based on how much money does a person really want to spend in their retirement, because you decide this before you retire. Now, in my case, I retired on sort of short notice. I did not plan my retirement like a year in advance. I had some things go on at work, and because I had done all of this stuff by setting up my finances, when something happened at work, I said, you know what? I'm financially free. I can go. I don't have to stay in this toxic work environment. So that is part of the freedom that you get with the fire movement. And also, people will get a certain amount of money, and they talk about the 4% rule. That if you take out 4%, now there's all kinds of details about it being a 60-40 stock and bond split and all that, but people don't ever talk about that. They just say, oh, the 4% rule. But let's just talk about this in general. If you have a lot of money invested in the stock market, you could take out 4% and never run out of money. Well, they're changing that. That's being updated, so always be learning. Look up the videos of the guy that created the 4% rule and did the research. He is now saying that you could take out more than 4%. So check him out, Bill Bingen. Check him out. But let's talk about that. The lean fire lifestyle is the first one that I'm going to talk about. Now, this is for minimalist, frugal, and low expense living, and that sort of incorporates me. So you could say I am in lean fire. That doesn't mean that because a person in lean fire lives on 20 to 40,000 a year, and a lot of people could say I could never live on 20 to 40,000 a year. A lot of Americans do because they move to lower cost of living areas. That's not an option for everyone. Some people move to other countries. I moved to a lower cost of living area in America, but some people move to low cost of living areas in Vietnam, in Thailand. All of these places, you could live like a king for $20,000 to $40,000 a year. So don't say it's not possible. It may not be possible in a high cost of living area. That's for sure. And that's why we moved from Maryland when we retired. So they have a target net worth of $500,000 to $1 million. If you are a low income person, as I was, you could retire on less than $500,000. Many people have done it. It's not that you have to have 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, as Susie Orman says, in order to retire. You could retire on less than $500,000 if you know where your money is and know where your money is going. For me, I live below my means. I had no choice but to do that. And so over the last 10 years before I retired, that's what I learned to do better and better and better. So by the time I retired early, I had it dialed in on living below my means. I had my car almost paid off. I had my motorcycle paid off. So I had very little debt when I retired. And my wife and I, we sold the house and we moved south and we put down a large amount on this house so that our house payments are low. That's all part of being able to live on 20 to 40,000 a year. Now that's not saying that that's all the income I have. I have more income than 20 to 40,000 a year, but I choose. It's a conscious choice to live on 20 to 40,000 a year. So I technically fit into the lean fire. And so who is it for? It's for people willing to live very simply. And that's me. You guys can see my yard out here. I go out and I rake in my yard and I pick up sticks, right? And I go fishing. I live very simply. It's often in low cost of living areas. That's what I chose because I knew that my pension, being as tiny as it is, would not afford me to be able to live in the DC metro area. And so it says maybe with roommates and house hacking. That's how I started in real estate. When I had almost low income, I was making about $40,000 a year when I bought my very first property. Right? When I started with the federal government, I was making up in Vermont about $40,000 a year. Well, I had roommates. And that's how I lowered my expenses. If you can lower your largest expense, which is housing, then you make a big step forward in the fire lifestyle. And I was doing it before I ever even heard of fire. So let's talk about number 2, which is fat fire. That lifestyle is comfortable or luxurious retirement with high spending flexibility. And this, you're trying to make, let's just say you're trying to have a retirement income of $100,000 a year or more. These people are typically high income earners that have saved quite a bit of money and have a lot of money either in the stock market or they have paid off real estate. One of the things about real estate is you do not need a bunch of properties. A lot of people have 2 properties, 3 properties, 4 properties, but those properties are paid off. You do not need 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 properties. You don't. So keep in mind that when people talk about I have this many properties in real estate, they're not paid off. They owe a lot of money on those properties. So also these people, their net worth may be upwards of $2.5 million. Now that could be in the stock market, And let's just say that you have assets of 5 million, but you only owe 2.5 million out of that 5 million. Well, that's your net worth of 2.5 million. It's not saying everything is paid off and this is all you have and this is all you owe. It's often people, let's say they have 10 million in assets, but they have 2.5 million of those 10 where they have access to that money that they have paid off. They only owe 7.5 million on their $10 million assets. So keep in mind that it's not just a single number item. And who is this for? This is for high income earners who want to maintain a current or upgraded lifestyle after they retire. If you want to travel more in your retirement than you did while you were working, you might save up extra money and be able to travel or be able to move to your dream location. Let's say that you live in one area, but you really want to live in Colorado. And Colorado is very expensive. You could afford to do that if you are in Fat Fire. You can afford to live the life of your dreams. So make sure you hit the like button. You can double tap on the screen. And next week, I'll try and do it correctly and go live at 10:15 Central Time without being unlisted. I'll try and make sure I do live. Every week, I seem to make some particular error in doing this whole YouTube thing. And that's why I'm glad YouTube is not a job for me. It's an avocation that I'm just doing in my retirement. So I'm not taking it that seriously. Although I will beat myself up after this live is over. So smash the like button if you learned something new today, and make sure you subscribe and see what mistake I make next Friday at 10:15. So we'll go on to the next fire, which is barista fire, right? Now, this is sort of semi-retirement where you have saved enough money in your retirement, or you have enough investments. Because when I say saved enough money, that also means that you could have enough real estate or some other investment throwing off income. That could be dividend income. A lot of people retire on dividend income. I have friends in Canada. They retired and they are living off of their dividend income from their stock market portfolio. They sold their primary residence, so they own no real estate. Well, they have a condo in Brazil. But other than the condo in Brazil, they own no real estate. And so they just stay there when they're in Brazil. But the point is that they live off of dividends. And that also, it's your income stream and whatever your income stream is. My income stream is my pension. That is what I'm trying to live on at $900 a month. And you might say, how can you do that? Because I'm frugal. Because I have very few needs. That's how I do that. So within this barista lifestyle, barista fire, which is part-time retirement, where let's just say you could become a barista at Starbucks because you have enough saved up in your investments that let's say you don't need to put more money into your investments. You could take a lower paying job with less stress and be happy. And that's barista fire. The annual expenses for this, $30,000 to $60,000. And part of that is covered by your part-time work. So you have some money from your investments and some money from your part-time work. And again, I could be lean fire, I could be barista fire. Some people might say, well, because you're still teaching part-time at colleges, you still have part-time income and you still have part-time employment. Yes, I do. And I can either save it all or I could use it to pay down debt like I'm doing right now when I get debt, which is every few years. I go back into debt and then I use my teaching income to pay off the debt. So this says the target net worth for barista fire is $300,000 to $1.2 million. If you have $1.2 million in it as a net worth right? That's not counting your assets. That's assets and liabilities minus your assets. So if you have 1.2 million, you could, if you were only living on 30,000 a year, see, so that 1.2 million would sustain a $30,000 a year income. And then you had part-time income doing something else, door dashing, another one, YouTube, another one. If you had part-time income to add to whatever you're pulling from your 1.2 million, you could retire early. And you could go and do your passion, which a lot of people, again, is YouTube. Back in the day, it was Starbucks that people would call this barista fire. They should probably call it YouTube fire nowadays in 2025. And so this is for people who want more freedom, but don't mind enjoying and working. A lot of people on YouTube do not mind doing YouTube and would rather do YouTube than to work a 9-to-5 job. And if YouTube allows you to retire early, meaning you take your investments, you live off of your investments, and you do YouTube to bring in that extra income that you may need to live the lifestyle that you want to live, that is barista fire. So let's talk about Coast Fire, because I sort of mentioned Coast Fire when I talked about barista fire. When I said that if you have enough money, you don't have to really go back to work. Like that 1.2 million could grow over time at 5 or 10% in the stock market over time. And by the time you get to retirement age, you have plenty of money to retire. Coast Fire is that. Coast Fire is when you save up money. Let's just say you're young and you may save money in your 20s and your 30s, enough that that money will grow on its own until you turn 65 and decide to really retire. Now, you may not be looking at early retirement, or you might be looking at, let's just say, retirement at 50. If you're retiring at 50, then you could save up money into your 30s and 40s and never have to save money again, because your money would compound on its own. And by the time you're 65, you have plenty of money for your designed retirement. And that's Coast Fire. And the annual expenses vary. This one doesn't have a set of expenses, because when you decide we don't have to save any more money in our retirement, the money that you bring home from your job, you could spend on your lifestyle. So you no longer have to live below your means. You could live at your means because you've saved enough money in your younger days, and it will compound on its own. And that's what they call Coast Fire. So that's enough invested early so that you'll have at least $1 million, by the time you're 60. Now, of course, nowadays people say the minimum that you want to have is $2 million. And it keeps going up because of inflation. And because if you're 20 years old now, by the time you get to be 50 or 60, you're thinking that needs to be 5 million or even 10 million. So it does vary. So Coast Fire is mostly for young people, because what you do is you use the time of compound interest. Coast Fire is not so much if you're starting late in life like me, in your 40s and 50s. You don't have time to coast. I didn't have time to coast. So if you're in your 20s, you could save into your 30s and say, that's it, we have enough. Let's just say we have $1 million by the time we're 30, 35. That million will turn into 5 million by the time we're 50 or 60. So that is Coast Fire. And so please join my channel by subscribing and liking on this video, and come back every week to see how this old guy does YouTube. Let's talk about Slow Fire, which is the last one that I'm going to talk about now. And this is traditional retirement, but still retiring earlier than 65. Now, again, I have myself have been qualified for at least 3 of these different types of fire. So you can't really put someone in a box, and you can't really say that they're 100% lean fire or 100% coast fire. You could say that I am slow fire. You could say that I'm still building fire in retirement. My financial freedom is still being built. Although I was able to quit my job in my 50s. And that's what it says here, is that slow fire is someone who quits their job in their 50s. And so it says the annual expense is moderate and similar to traditional fire targets. So slow fire can work for anyone. And one of my poll questions was, how many years do you think it would take you to complete fire? Put that in the comments. 5 years? 10 years from where you are right now? If you started saving and investing aggressively and cutting your expenses to live below your means, and let's just say you had a side hustle like YouTube that was bringing in extra money, how many years would it take you to reach your definition of financial independence and retire early? Even if you had to keep doing YouTube to help you make ends meet, even if you had to move to a lower cost of living area, or even if you had to take on, let's say, house hacking, where you could have relatives move in with you. People have done that. You could move in with relatives to lower your housing expenses. Any way that you can cut your lifestyle expenses would get you here faster. And that's just a decision that you have to make, whether or not that sacrifice is worth it in your life. So let's talk about the target net worth for somebody on slow fire. It says 1 million to 2 million. Now, again, that is depending on your lifestyle and what you design your future to be. So I'm going to go through a little summary of this, because I've talked about 5 different types of fire. I've talked about lean fire. I've talked about fat fire. I've talked about barista fire, which we are now going to name YouTube fire. We're going to rename that one. And so then there's coast fire and slow fire. So we've talked about 5 different types of fire. And, there is the annual spending in lean fire of $20,000 to $40,000 a year. Fat fire is over $100,000 a year. Barista or YouTube fire is $30,000 to $60,000 a year. And coast fire varies, and actually all of the fires vary, just so that it's not a box of you are planning to spend this amount of money in retirement. Everything varies because personal finance is personal. So then there's slow fire, which is $40,000 to $80,000 a year. And so you could say I'm in slow fire. You could say I'm in lean fire. I don't think I'll ever be in fat fire unless I decide to spend rental income someday when I get higher amount of cash flow, which that is possible. I mean, you could change. You're not locked in to a certain fire section for the rest of your life. You can start with barista fire, right? Which we call YouTube fire. You could start that doing a part-time job. Then you could move into lean fire. One of the things I've done in retirement is that I have quit one of my colleges so that I have more free time. So I am working less and less and less over time. When I get Social Security, I may quit another college so that I'm working less and less over time, and I'll be more and more towards fat fire or slow fire. Maybe I'll move up to $80,000 a year of spending, right? Maybe. We'll see. I could always use a new boat for fishing, so we will see. So you get to decide. That's the upshot of all of these different fires, is that you get to decide what works best for you. But fire is an intentional lifestyle. You have to be very intentional about your saving, about paying off debt, about investing. And anyone can reach FIRE if they are intentional. If you are out spending money willy-nilly and you're living paycheck to paycheck, it'll be harder to get to FIRE because you're not being intentional about your spending. So I talked earlier about FLOW, which is a term I learned this week watching a passive investing podcast, which is sort of investing in syndications. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother video. But it stands for Financial Liberty by Ownership of Wealth Streams. And this guy just made this up this week using ChatGPT, right? And so what it means is financial freedom from multiple income streams. That is also part of FIRE. The more income streams you have, the faster or the easier you can choose a FIRE lifestyle that works for you. But what he's talking about is syndication investing, as opposed to this whole thing of, let's say, when you're trying to save up to 50% of your income, some people call that deprivation. And they say, oh, well, you're depriving yourself of the joys of life. Some people do, some people don't. Some people just do not need to spend that amount of money. They just don't. They have very high incomes at their job, and they have very simple lifestyles. You could be a programmer making 6 figures and live on a farm. You don't have to be living in the DC metro area or New York or something like that. So some people have a very simple lifestyle and they just don't need, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even though that's what they make at their corporate job. So they're able to bank a lot of that money. So I believe, this is just my own personal thing, so we'll go personal a bit here. And you may have heard thunder out there, so it may be getting ready to rain. But I believe in multiple streams of income. So I don't ever want to rely on one stream of income. If you have a YouTube channel, that's another stream of income. If you have multiple YouTube channels, which I've seen lately, those are multiple streams of income. If your YouTube channel gets memberships, that's another stream of income. If you're door dashing and you have memberships and you're shooting YouTube videos while you're door dashing, those are all multiple streams of income. If you have merch on your channel, multiple streams of income. I am an advocate for as many streams of income as you can have. Remember, I said millionaires typically have 7 streams of income. So at a minimum, I would shoot for 7 streams of income. And that is how you build wealth and how you maintain your wealth, because sometimes one of those streams of income may be lower than it is normally, and you have another stream of income that picks up the slack for that. And that's what I do. I have multiple streams of income. My pension is a solid stream of income, and that's why I'm living on $900 a month, because it's reliable, it's not variable, and if the other streams of income come in, fine. That's icing on the cake. So remember, every dollar you save and invest is a vote for your freedom. And that's what I do. I say to myself, Daryl, if you save this money now, you can have financial freedom later. So yes, I am still saving money in my retirement because I have a future plan. I have a 5-year goal of how much money I want in 5 years. I have a 10-year goal. I also want to make sure that if anything ever happens to me, my wife will be okay. So I am self-insured in that respect. That if anything ever happens to me, I have enough streams of income that will continue for the rest of her life. And that's a whole nother thing about these multiple streams of income. Make sure that you're investing in ways that take care of you, take care of your loved ones, and take care of everything. Make sure you have a will. I'm going to say that now. I'm going off topic, but make sure you have a will. And if you have enough money, get a trust. So most people don't have a will, and most people don't get a trust. And then after they pass away, everything is up to the courts and up to their state laws. And it may not be what they wanted to happen. That was my little side tangent, my public service announcement. So I cannot see the questions because I'm horizontal on here. So hopefully I've had people answer questions if someone's had a question. Well, and Tiger on Fire is saying that he needs to either update his will or his trust. And he's early retired. He's even earlier than me. So he's done a fabulous job, much better than I did. So everyone gets to do what works for them. And so some of the questions that come in are, what's a good savings rate? Well, a good savings rate is starting with your employer's match, if you have one, and then increasing that 1% a year so that you do not miss that money. That's one of the things that I do, is I increase my savings rate every year just a little bit so that I do not miss the money. I still try to live on the same amount. If I get a pay raise, I still try to live on the same amount as before the pay raise, so that that money gets invested and starts compounding, because I don't have all the years that somebody in Coast Fire has. So where should I start investing if I only have $100? That is an absolutely great question. If I had only $100, I would invest in myself. I would buy the book Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. I would buy Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I would read these foundational financial literacy books, because those will get you on the path so that when you get another $100, you know where it can go. The Money Guy Show on YouTube, they have the financial order of operations. And it says, we will tell you where your next dollar should go. So there's a lot of free financial advice that you can get. You can come to Fire with Dr. Ninja Turtle for free financial tips. And we talk about all things personal finance. So there are many ways nowadays, because of YouTube and because of Instagram and all these different socials, that you can get financial information. But if I only had $100, I would get those two books and I would learn how to get my assets, because this is a mindset, how to get my assets to cover my liabilities, and how to get out of debt as quick as possible, because debt is slowing you down from getting to your fire goal of retiring early. So get rid of the debt. That's my point there. So what tools do you recommend for beginners? Well, there are all kinds of tools that a beginner could use. There's YNAB, you need a budget, that will help you to get on a budget. There is M1 Finance. There are all kinds of apps that younger people today use to get their finances together, because it helps them to automate their finances. One way that I got to Fire was automating my investment into my 401k. So when I got a paycheck, I made sure that from my government paycheck, 80 to 90% of that paycheck went into my 401k, so that I maxed out that 401k for as many years as possible before I pulled the ripcord and quit that job. So one of the things that you can do is to have the mindset of sacrifice now for the benefit later, because that will get you into the mindset of, yes, I want to retire early, and I am willing to pay the price in my lifestyle to retire early. Now, again, that's different for everyone. No one needs to do it the way I did it. Partly I did it because I had no choice, right? You do you. And that's what my channel is about. There's no shame here. Whatever somebody shares with me privately, it stays private. There is no shame here. And that's why I work with people in my community once a month on their personal finances. I work individually with people. And if you did want to work with me or even just chat with me about your finances, I'm not giving financial advice. I have my email in the description of my channel. If you ever want to email me and just, throw out some scenarios. What would you do in this situation? How would you do this? What would be the best way for me to do an HSA? And we could investigate that within your health savings plans at your job. I would love to help you investigate that. So, another question. How do I enjoy life without spending a lot? That is a fabulous question, right? A lot of people like to spend, and that's okay. You just have to realize the trade-off of what you're spending and whether or not you're willing to spend that now and slowly move towards fire. You can go toward teaching. Oh, that may be lightning outside. I'm not sure. We'll see if thunder comes up here in a moment. When I started teaching after I got my PhD, I applied for jobs day and night. Day and night. I applied for teaching positions. And I applied to well over 100 teaching positions in 1 month. And I got 4 or 5, and one came 6 or 8 months later that I had applied for 6 or 8 months before. I got as many streams of income as possible until those streams of income gave me the financial freedom to make the choices that I wanted to make in my life. So, how you enjoy life without spending a lot of money is you have the mindset that you're headed towards early retirement and that at some point in your future you want to design your life and live the life that you own. So how do you travel on a fire budget? Let's talk about that because I'm traveling in August. I'm going to Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm driving. So I'm driving from where I live. That is how I'm going to do Omaha on a small budget. I just went in July, early July this month, on the 4th of July weekend, I went to Canada. I went to Vancouver, Canada. That was a very expensive trip that I made. Have I paid all that off yet? Yes, right? I paid it all back because of my teaching income, multiple streams of income. If you have multiple streams of income, you can travel on a fire budget. You travel on your own fire budget, not on my fire budget. My fire budget are Holiday Inn hotels. That's just it. That's just what I do. I'm in various different hotel plans, but when I travel, that's the one that I use because they have a ton of locations, so I can pretty much find one in any town wherever I'm stopping. So that works for me. Everyone has to do what works for them, and personal finance is personal. So yes, you can travel on a fire budget. I'm going to Hawaii in January for the very first time. Never been to Hawaii. It's a dream of mine. And so I want to talk about this because we live our dreams in retirement. Being frugal and living on less allows me to live my dreams in retirement. It's not about deprivation. It's about I make the financial choices that I want to make. And so I don't know if you saw, but the light in my house just flickered because we have a thunderstorm outside. So we won't be on the live much longer because I've now gone 49 minutes. So what I'm trying to do is I am encouraging you to live the life that you want to live on your own terms. Don't try to live it on my terms. Live it on your own terms. If you want to travel first class, go first class. I debated that in going to Hawaii. I did. I debated flying first class to Hawaii. I can't bring myself to spend the money yet. And that's what I mean about the different levels of fire. If I go to Hawaii this year on a shoestring, which is sort of how I'm going, I can go to Hawaii in the future first class. When I go to Hawaii, the place I'm staying is a very luxury, resort, right? I'm going to a luxury resort in Hawaii. Part of it is because I'm living my dream. But am I flying first class to a luxury resort? No, because I'm not there yet. Someday, if I keep living the way I'm living, I will be there. And that's why I do YouTube as an avocation, because I have enough different income streams and I'm trying to grow my different income streams that I don't need the YouTube income stream. If you're on YouTube and this is your business, run it like a business. Have 12 different departments that are all generating income from different parts of YouTube. Do whatever you have to do to make as much money as you can from YouTube. Personally, I'm not going to have these different streams of income from YouTube. Anything that my YouTube channel ever makes, from like AdSense, once and if I'm ever monetized. But I'm planning on getting monetized, just so you know. I'm not saying it'll never happen. But what I'm saying is, I just want the AdSense from advertisers to go to the homeless in my community. I don't want membership fees to go to the homeless in my community. I just want the advertisers that pay for YouTube. And I'm going off on another little side tangent. One of the things that I've seen in the last couple days, and I don't know what this is, but I am seeing advertisements on lives. They say sponsored advertisements, but I am seeing advertisements come up in the middle of lives. I have no idea how that happens or why that happens, but I thought that you couldn't get advertisements in lives. Who knows? I don't know YouTube all that well. Somebody please investigate that and email me if you know how or why that works. So I'm going to recap and just try to end this live because I started so late because I did it incorrectly, as us old guys tend to do. So remember, anybody can achieve fire, right? Anybody. There is nobody out there who cannot get financial independence. And if they choose to, they could retire early. Financial independence does not require retirement. In my case, it was retirement early. And another friend of mine on YouTube, he has the acronym, not financial independence, retire early. His is financial independence, recreational employment. And I've adopted that. That's what I have, is I have financial independence, recreational employment. YouTube might be your recreational employment, but make as much money on YouTube as you can make. That's what I am an advocate of. So choose the fire lifestyle that works for you. You know, we talk about people in my community being owners. They own their life, they design their life, and they live the life that they dream of. I am living my dreams in retirement. My wife and I have an RV at a lake where I can go fishing. I'm about to go to Hawaii for the very first time. So don't think that I am living in deprivation. I am not. I am choosing to live on $900 a month, normally. But that does not count the vacations in my retirement, because I am here to enjoy my life. And if it's not enjoyable, like if YouTube ever became a job, I wouldn't do it anymore. I don't need another job. And I'll never do another 9 to 5. So as long as YouTube is enjoyable, I will be here. And I enjoy talking about personal finance and helping other people who started with nothing, like me, become financially free. That's what Fire with Dr. Ninja Turtle is all about. So let's talk about the last thing that I'm going to mention, then I'm going to really shut this down, which is always be learning. Always. For the rest of your life, be a lifelong learner. I learned about flow this week. I learned about HSAs in the past, watching other financial independence channels and other certified financial planners, CFPs. I watch all of these channels on YouTube to learn how best to lower my taxes, how best to invest my money, and I'm going to bring everything I learned to you through FIRE with Dr. Ninja Turtle. So I am going to say goodbye for now. I'm going to come back next week at 10:15. It's going to be public, not unlisted. Like the very first time I went on live, it was unlisted because I didn't know any better. This time, I just made the mistake and didn't understand what I was doing. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry for coming on so late and doing 2 lives this morning instead of 1. I will see you all next week.